Hello again, this is Charlie Belfontaine, and you're listening to the Homebuyers Hour on WCPT AM 820, where the facts matter. And today we're going to be talking about FHA and VA mortgages, more so what the appraiser looks for. In the studio with me is Mark McCutcheon. He's one of our home inspectors, and I'm going to go out on a limb and say he is my favorite home inspector. Oh. Imagine that one. Mark, tell us a little bit about yourself and why everybody loves you so much.
I've been doing this for about 5 years. I really enjoy it, and I think that I'm very inquisitive, so I guess that really helps when you're an inspector and you want to try to figure things out and get to the bottom of things. That really helps in that profession to be that way.
I love it, and yeah, we call that FSO, figure stuff out, you know. I gotta admit that I really enjoy reading the reviews that our clients leave about you, because they really express how passionate you are about helping them. And, you know, we've always talked about how rewarding this career is. So remotely, and he's going to end up being our subject expert for today, is Joey Matthews of the Federal Savings Bank. Joey, can you give us a little bit about you, your company, and why you're so great?
Yes, sir. Well, I'm certainly okay. My name is Joey Matthews, world's Okay-est mortgage dude at the Federal Savings Bank, NMLS 1330694, running the frontline team over there. The reason I'm so okay is because I have a weird tick in my brain that makes me collect everything I possibly can up front. I make a borrower's life heck until I pre-approve them. Once I'm pre-approved and they go under contract, I realize, oh, wow, mortgages are super duper easy. This must be because my mortgage dude was a jerk up front and made me get everything to him. So I make sure that my transaction goes smooth before it's even a transaction.
Which is the key. Solve the problem before it becomes a problem. And that's kind of what I want to talk about with the VA and the FHA mortgage. You introduced me to something called an MRP. And I'm coming clean
NPR,
right now.
Charlie.
NPR shows you how ignorant I am. And I was just about to say that. When it comes to these requirements, I am as ignorant as can be, because it doesn't really fall into our realm. But you know what? It does fall into our realm, don't you think?
Yeah, there's some crossover for sure. I get asked every time that it's a VA FHA loan. They're like, oh, do you know? So I think, that yes, it very much does.
So, Joey, what does NPR mean?
So it's minimum property requirements. And I'm glad that you actually mentioned that, Mark, because one of the things I run into all the time is, hey, when is this VA inspection? When is this VA inspection? There's no such thing as a VA inspection. However, if you have an inspector who is up to date and knows VA NPRs, it will make your life much easier before the appraiser gets there. The appraiser is going to be an FHA or VA registered appraiser, and they're the ones who are going to make sure that the property meets the NPRs for the appraisal, right? So if you know that the property meets them ahead of time, you know you're going to have a good appraisal as long as the value's where it needs to be. If you have an inspector who does not know the NPRs and they don't notice things, then you may get things that need to be fixed late in the game. So I think it's a huge not selling point, but a huge benefit to have an inspector who is familiar with the NPRs for the VA and FHA.
So let's go through that then, if you're comfortable with it. Tell us what are, and I know we just ended up putting a list together, and we were talking about we're actually going to start making this into a class so all other home inspectors can get continuing education requirements for it. And I think eventually we're going to get it for real estate agents too, because quite frankly, this is great information for us to know so we can help the whole process go by. I get it. We're all separate businesses, but in all reality, and Joey, I'm asking you this, don't you think we're a team?
Absolutely. There's whenever a client is buying a home, everyone that is helping them buy that home is part of a team.
And we should work together.
Inspector. Absolutely. Inspector, appraiser, real estate agent, attorney. Your seller is part of the team because they want to sell you the house, right? And we're all part of the team working towards a common goal. So 1,000% agree with you, Charlie.
So my thought process is this, right? I guess I should be asking you this. When does the appraiser, during the transaction, so this is the part I do know. Somebody's searching for a house. They find a house that they want to buy. They put a contract down there. And then we got this 5-day window of attorney approval, the home inspection that comes in there. We got just 5 days 5 business days. They have to get all that stuff done. Where does the appraisal come in then?
So the appraisal, that actually is going to depend on how quickly I get the contract and how quickly a borrower signs their disclosures. So a client signs their disclosures. We can't, on our end, order anything. We can't order title. We can't order appraisal. We can't push the file to opening until we have a signed disclosure package from our client. So if they never sign, we'll never be able to order appraisal because there's an important document inside that huge package called an intent to proceed. If we don't have that, we are outside of regulation if we try to push the file forward. So if you do get it all to me right away, we will order the appraisal right away.
Can you expand a little more on that? What was it called again? The intent to what?
There's a disclosure that when you go under contract, you get a big disclosure package, 50, 60 pages long, and there's a certain document in there called the intent to proceed.
And this is the buyer, not the seller. Is that correct?
The buyer, right. Correct. So this is coming from us to our client, the buyer. We can't do anything unless we have a signed intent to proceed. If we don't have that, we don't have anything. But once all of that is done and we are able to order the appraisal, we will order it that day, and then the appraiser will get assigned by the VA, or it will go into a queue for someone who is FHA registered to pick it up for an FHA appraisal, and they will schedule with the listing agent or the buying agent, depending on who our point of contact is. Now, those agents know when the inspection is going to be, right? So if they want to hold off on actually scheduling the appraisal until after the window is over, that's totally fine. I'm okay with it. They just have to understand that it could push back our timeline if you're looking for a quick close.
Got it.
No, that all sounds great. And then I guess where I'm going is, how can I help an appraiser? How can I, as a home inspector, help an appraiser? What are some of the things that I should be advising people to do?
So if we know we have a VA or FHA home, it is important for you to be told that up front by the client or the real estate agent. And so you're aware that, okay, we have VA FHA loan. I know that I have to hit these MPRs. So safety hazards. And when we say MPRs, the minimum property requirements, essentially it's an all-encompassing acronym for safety and health issues with the home, right? So we want to make sure that you are buying a safe home that the government will guarantee or insure. So if Charlie or Mark goes to a home, they know it's VA or FHA, they're able to go into a garage. They're able to go into the kitchen. If they don't see that there is a GFI outlet in there, they know that that is something that the VA or FHA is going to be required to be installed because it is a safety hazard. If that shorts and the house burns down, that's no good, right? That's what a GFI is for. It's to prevent those shorts from, well, you know more about that, from happening. If there is, and I know that this isn't specifically stated in the MPRs, but handrails. Handrails between landings of more than 3 steps are going to be required. They're going to be required because it's a trip hazard, it's a fall hazard. If you get hurt, now you can't afford your home, it goes into default. Now the government has to guarantee or insure it because you can no longer work because you fell over some stairs, right? So when we're talking about MPRs, we are looking for safety hazards.
But isn't that an opinionated thing? I mean, do they lay out exactly? I mean, you threw out GFCIs, for example, and you threw out handrails, for example. Is that listed somewhere where here's a list? If this doesn't exist, boom, that's a problem?
There are – so the handbooks, the HUD handbook, the 4000.1, and the VA handbook, literally just the 26-7 pamphlet, are the ones that list out the MPRs, right? What is it? I want to say it's chapter 16. Could be totally wrong. Of the lender handbook will list out MPRs, but they're also going to state any obvious safety issues, right? So that's where it becomes all-encompassing, and that's where if an inspector believes it's a safety issue, it's good to know up front. If the appraiser, now this is where I get a little bit of leniency here, right?
Yeah,
if
that's
the appraiser
the opinion comes in there.
They decide. What's that?
I said that's where the opinion's going to come in, right? The appraiser kind of decides everything.
If the appraiser comes in and decides they think something is a safety hazard, and I disagree, there's a good chance I can get that MPR waived because it's not explicitly stated in the handbook. However, obviously, we want to make sure that you're aware of it. And if you agree that it's a safety hazard and you want it remedied as the client, then by all means go for it. But if you don't believe it's a safety hazard, it's not explicitly stated in the handbook as a safety hazard, then I go through a waiver process with the VA where you sign a waiver saying, I disagree, this isn't a safety hazard. We sign a waiver saying we also disagree that it's a safety hazard. We get it pushed to the VA, and they allow us to waive that condition of the appraisal. So there's a lot that goes into it. It's a beautiful process. And this is, again, why I love the VA loan, because there's so much latitude for lenders and borrowers to work with that a lot of people in the industry don't even realize. They're just like, oh, the VA appraiser screwed everything up. They hit this. They don't realize that a lot of things can be waived.
I was unaware of that.
No, me neither. But that brings up a really good point. You know, it's not about mistakes happening. It's how we handle the mistakes that makes us good human beings. I mean, everybody makes a mistake. And, you know, I'm going to go a little derogatory, I guess, on appraisers a little bit. But what sort of training do they have when it comes to finding safety issues in a house? I mean, what do you think, Mark? I don't know.
I would imagine that they take one brief class about it, right? To get, I would imagine it would be like a 3 to 6 hour class, maybe online, that they saw. You know, they take one time and that would be it. I don't think they have any kind of real training, unless they happen to be by chance that they used to do both things, be an appraiser and a home inspector, which is actually not that uncommon.
But now we're guessing, Joe.
Yeah,
Joey,
guessing.
What do you think, or what do you know?
No, you know, I'm going to tell you that I agree with you guys. To get registered, I imagine you're showing your license, you're bonded, you're insured.
Yep.
And you likely have to take a test after going over the MPRs in the handbook. That is my guess.
Mine too.
I would imagine it's a 3 to 6 hour class, and it's very similar to how a lender becomes a quote unquote VA specialist or FHA specialist because they took a 3 to 6 hour class. But again, that doesn't make you an expert, because these handbooks are thousands of pages. You have got to get into the handbooks to really become an expert in VA and FHA.
Experience.
So,
yeah.
Now, I know one of the articles that's in there in the NPR, and I believe it or not, I actually did just read these in the last couple of weeks, and you and we're going to be putting together a continuing education class for home inspectors on this as well. I know that one of the line items in there, and I want to say it's like chapter 1, 2, or 3. It's like way up in the beginning, where they make it pretty clear that appraisal process is not a home inspection. Is that right, Joey?
It is absolutely correct. A VA, and obviously they do that because they're trying to limit liability for the appraiser if they miss anything, right? Which is why it's so important to get an inspection. So always get both. An inspection isn't an appraisal, and an appraisal isn't an inspection. It is, for all intents and purposes, it is assigning a value to the property to make sure that you are buying something for what you're buying it for, right? So the value is there for the price. Right. They inspect items, but they are not experts in that field. In fact, there's plenty of times where I'll get an appraisal back that says, get an inspector out here to check out this, get an inspector out here to check out that. And then we have to get an inspector out there anyway to certify if something is a problem or not.
But that's also another chapter that I read in there too, is that the appraiser is supposed to be recommending contractors and not inspections.
Was it contract?
Okay.
Yeah, I read that too. I thought, and you're going to make clarity to this, but I thought it was that they're going to make are they going to make a monetary suggestion on how much it is to fix something or not?
They do. So if, let's say a handrail comes up, they'll put a cost to cure of $50, $100. They'll probably say $300, even though realistically putting in a 3-step handrail is going to cost you $50, right? They're going to always overestimate on the cures, from my experience. They will include that cost. They'll also, if there is a structural issue in the foundation, maybe they see a crack, they'll say, we suggest getting a structural engineer out here.
Well, that's nuts, Joey. That's like $600 to $1,000 to get a structural engineer for a lousy crack.
Yes.
That doesn't help the VA. That doesn't help the veteran.
No, it does not. So this is also why it is so important to get your home inspection. Because then if the home inspector, we can use a home inspector's report. The appraiser just says get a structural engineer out there. They have no idea what they're talking about. That's just my opinion, I guess. But we can get a home inspector out there saying, hey, like I just had one in Buffalo, New York. The floor was sagging. It's an older house, right? So it's settled, right? It's so common out there because everything in Buffalo is so old. Also, never move to Buffalo. It's awful.
Oh, jeez.
But
Buffaloians.
We got a home inspector out there that was able to certify that that is normal for the area and that it's not a safety hazard. We're able to use that. We're able to close with it, right? So even though they're saying it has to be a structural engineer, it's because the appraiser is trying to limit their liability as much as humanly possible. That way, if we go get a inspector to certify that this is safe, that's on the inspector now. It's not on a structural engineer, right? It's much more inexpensive to get an inspector out there. Now, if an inspector says get a structural engineer out here, that's a totally different story because then we know we have an issue, right? And you should probably run away from that property quickly.
Well, I wouldn't go that far. I'm going to backpedal a little bit. Mark, I actually want to get your opinion on.
Yeah.
We don't recommend structural engineers on everything.
Not at all. Not unless it's like, whoa, like I'm really confused by it, or I think it's unsafe itself, or I'm just questioning the structure in general. Like I see some pretty poor construction practices sometimes, and that's when I'm like, I don't like the way that they, fasten these pieces of wood together, stuff like that, big cuts in wood that are in poor places, things of that nature. So I'm really gonna try, every once in a while I'll kind of say, if this is something that's really bothering you, then you can have a structural engineer come out. But we think this is a normal thing if that's what I believe. So it gets couched a little bit because, it's very rare that you actually need a structural engineer. Most things can be explained away fairly easily.
And I'm going to add on to it. When you do a structural engineering evaluation, that takes 6 months. You cannot tell if a property is still moving in a matter of looking at it in an hour or less. It's impossible. It's only a problem if it's still moving. That's the key. And that's why they're going to put a chart on it to see if it's still moving over a 6-month period, and then they're going to be recording it in there. So we are our home inspection profession, and I think most of us follow these same rules. Anything that's less than 1/4 of an inch, we consider that normal cracking. We really don't have a problem with it. If it looks like water's coming in, then we want to get injected epoxy. Again, we don't want to get a structural engineer. Let's go straight to the contractor and just get this fixed. And if it's fixed, then it's no problem. So we need to stop the water from coming in, and we could do that with injected epoxy. And in today's time, you're looking at around $500. And I'm sorry for quoting other people's prices, but it is what it is. Then if it's bigger than that, and then we're going to start getting, raising the alarm levels up a little bit. If it's moving in 2 different directions, in other words, the crack happened, so they had to move apart from each other. Now if they're moving forward and backwards or up and down, so it moved in 2 different directions, we consider that serious. Again, it is not a reason to get a structural engineer. We move right to the foundation repair people, all right? If somebody wants to get a second opinion and not believe us, then go hire a structural engineer. But again, you're looking at $600 to $1,000 for this person. If the crack was repaired and the crack came back again, this is moving.
Yeah,
this is active.
That's alarming.
Yeah, so we need to stop that moving. Again, we don't have to get a structural engineer. We already know it's moving. Let's go straight to the foundation repair company. And then we need to be able to recognize that those repairs are done properly. Joey, are you willing to help people if they want to call you with questions about any of these things or the NPRs or the process, whether it be an agent or an appraiser, a home inspector, anyone?
Does a fish swim in water? Absolutely.
I love you, man. It's awesome.
Absolutely.
Well, how do people get hold of you then?
My phone is available.
How do they get hold of you?
You call me, you text me, 630-235-2405. Sorry, I had to slow it down. I realized how fast I was talking for a second there.
Say it again, please.
Facebook, Joey, 630-235-2405. That is my personal line. Call or text anytime. Joey W. Matthews on Facebook. Find me there. Got a business page too. Find me there. Joey W. Matthews on Instagram. Send me an email, jmatthews@thefederalsavingsbank.com. 1 T in Matthews because we're Polish. I'm not going to say the other word I've used in the past. But yeah, seriously, this I never wanted to pigeon myself into something, but I think this is just so huge, and it's, these government loans don't get the credit they deserve because they are fantastic products for the people that need them or the people that are entitled to them. So,
yeah, you're a professional in it. You're an expert now, or you're very comfortable in it, so it's good to let people know that your service is available. That's cool.
And you're a veteran yourself, right?
Yes, sir. Happy time in the Marine Corps. Went to Iraq, fell in love with the desert. Yeah, so I love my vets. I love helping them get the VA loan because there's so many times where I see them get turned away from the VA loan and be pushed towards the conventional or FHA product, which is so weird to me that they would push FHA over VA when it's almost the exact same stuff, right? The only major difference is the down payment requirement, and in Illinois, a pest inspection requirement for VA.
All right. And that when you say the pest inspection requirement, you're talking about completing and submitting the NPMA-33 form. Is that a correct statement?
That is correct. You can either submit that form or any state certified form. So if you are in a state that has their own form and that is what the inspector prefers to use, we can accept that as well.
Sounds good. And that can be filled out by licensed home inspectors here in Illinois. All right. And I'm gonna go out on a limb here and tell, it's better to have our home inspectors complete this form as long as they know how to do it than it is to hire a termite inspector to do that. And my rationale is the termite inspector is going to be there for 15 minutes, 20 minutes. Mark, how long are you typically on site?
Minimum 3 hours, almost always. Sometimes up to 5 or 6. It just depends on the size of the home we're looking at. So far, vastly longer than the termite inspection. I'm looking into everything. I'm up in the attic, like way in there. I'm way into the crawl space. I'm not just taking a tour around the house real quick and be like, oh, that's okay.
Yeah, and not only that, but you're going to be behind furniture. You're going to be up in the attic. You're going to be looking around. The longer you're there looking, the more likely it is that you're going to find those tubes, past repairs, anything of this sort that comes in there. And then we can go ahead and document that to protect the VA, all right? Or we're going to say, hey, listen, we looked for 3 hours. Granted, we were looking at the furnace and the electric panel and all the other stuff, too. I get it. But we were in that house with our eyes open and alert for 3 or more hours in there. And if we're going to see something, I think we have a better chance of seeing it than anyone else.
We'll see it. We find termite stuff all the time, frankly, And we're looking on the outside, too, for past traps and stuff. So that's that's an easy. Once you know what those look like, too, you're kind of finding them. I saw some on the south side the other day. They were huge. I'd never seen some.
The traps or the termites?
The actual traps themselves were like it was like a big thing like that. They had this huge spike that was down in it, but I'd never seen them that size before, so I was confused because at first I thought it was a sprinkler head. So then I walked up to it and I read the top. And I didn't know what that was, so then I Googled it while I was there, and there it came up as as the traps, and I was like, oh my god.
The University of Google, I love it.
Yeah.
So this message is to real estate agents right now and home inspectors, all right? If anybody's interested in getting, so that you can add this to your repertoire so you can help your clients, you can help your VAs better, and I'm not trying to be mean or rude or downplay the importance of an exterminator, but if anyone needs help, getting the MPA form, completing the MPA form, we are more than happy to get that, help you get it, show you how to complete it and everything else that you're going to be looking for, all right? And then to the appraisers, I'm going to throw this out there too. The Chicagoland Home Inspector, we train home inspectors, all right? We have a license, an educator provider license with the Illinois Department of Financial and Professional Regulations, and we train home inspectors. We help other schools, other organizations with it. We do a lot of CE classes. And here's the cool part, Joey. You're going to love this part. Most of our classes, if not all of them, are free, all right? So if you're a real estate agent and you want to learn what the home inspectors learn, go to Home Inspector University of Illinois, and that website is www.hiuil.com. Again, that's hiuil.com. And sign up. We'll get you going on a lot of this stuff, and you can learn as much as you can about the home inspection profession and the different defects that we normally find, and you're going to go through the same training that the home inspectors do. And I'm going to switch this up a little bit and think about this, real estate agent, and how you're helping your client. when you're doing the showing, the more you know, the more you're worth. If you start recognizing issues, you can do one of two things. You can give your client a heads up and say, hey, if this home inspector's on his game, they're going to talk about this, 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 and this. And then maybe that's too much for your client to go ahead and absorb and want to negotiate for. Well, guess what? You just saved them the fee of the home inspection. You saved them that emotional roller coaster ride. You did a whole bunch of stuff. And that emotional roller coaster ride is why we're doing these classes. And, Joey, this is why we're going to put this whole FHA VA thing together on here with the handrails, the other stuff. Because if we can go ahead and get everybody to understand that the appraiser may go ahead and find this as a defect. They may miss it, but they may find it too. You're going to have a very short window to go ahead and get these repairs done. And I'm not too sure, but I believe the seller has to do them or something like that, so that could create a headache down the road. So let's get all this taken care of before the appraiser gets here. Because do you have to pay the appraiser to go back out there and confirm things are fixed?
So on FHA, yes. On VA, if it's a chipped paint issue or if it's a significant safety issue where the underwriter is not comfortable when they're certifying, then we would need them to go out there. Again, on VA, we have a lot more latitude. We can have a realtor take a picture of a repair and send it to us, except for issues of chipping paint and any safety, major safety issue.
Okay.
But almost anything else, almost anything, we can get self-certified with a picture from realtor or from the seller.
Okay.
So tell us a little bit. You mentioned chipping paint. And I know and I forgot, it's like 30 to 35, somewhere in there. It talks about lead paint and houses that were built before 1978 and houses that were built after 1978. Can you expound on that a little bit for us?
Yeah, for sure. So houses built before 1978, granted, undoubtedly, they have been repainted since then. There's no guarantee that the old paint was stripped, but we know that they have likely been repainted, new walls put up, old walls torn down, all that good stuff, right? So the appraiser has to go in, assuming that no work has been done to the property since 1978. So if they see chipped paint, they have to hit it. That has to be repaired. Right, and they have to, once it's been repaired, the appraiser has to go back out and re-inspect to make sure it was completed. We can't use pictures for that because there's some miracles that can be done in Photoshop. I've seen it firsthand now.
I'm sorry.
Oh, man.
Yeah,
that's our society, Joey, isn't it? It's one bad actor, and then now everybody else gets more hoops that they have to jump through.
Absolutely. So the appraiser's got to go out and see that. Now, the other thing is, even if your house was born after 1978 and there's chipping paint on the exterior, then we may have to have them go out there anyway. Why? Because a lot of this paint is going to be weatherproof paint, right? So if there's chipping paint, the appraiser is going to assume that there is water getting into the house. So now we have a moisture issue potentially, right? Even if they don't even see moisture damage inside the house and there's no clear and obvious moisture damage, they still have to make sure that the paint gets repaired and they come out and re-inspect.
Does it matter what the substrate underneath the paint is?
Oh, man, I'm going to have to go into my NPRs deeper, Charlie. I don't have anything on that, but an appraiser is not a home inspector, and they are going to assume water encroachment.
All right. Because I know that some of the trim is going to be like vinyl trim. All right. And maybe somebody painted it.
Yeah.
Well, that stuff is amazing. I really like it. It's expensive.
Yeah.
I mean, what's your thought on that stuff or like brick mold around windows?
Yeah, I like it, but it doesn't take paint. So I could see that, if somebody paints it, that it's going to chip because they did, they just didn't make the right repair or whatever they were trying to do. So then they don't know, like I know appraiser's not going to know. So that's, again, why you would have a home inspector around and be like, oh, yeah.
Or if it was hardy board or aluminum paint, or aluminum siding or vinyl siding that somebody painted, even that is going to have to be repainted just based on the assumption, or? And Joey, that was for you.
They're going to do that, but I can't speak for an appraiser here, but I also believe that an appraiser with enough knowledge of inspections is going to look at it, use some common sense. Right? I always say common sense prevails. I also say common sense isn't common. But they could use common sense and just completely They may point it out, but not put it in the appraisal report, right?
Yeah.
So they have latitude to make sure that, they're not including photos of certain things that may be an issue. Because if we see it, we have to just assume, right? But if they don't take a picture of it, we never see it. So they do have some latitude. If they know it's aluminum, if they know it's weatherproofed and it's just because they painted over vinyl, then they may just leave it out of the report. But if they aren't experienced, if they don't know enough about homes, they're going to include it, and then it has to be repaired.
So, Mark, it's more than, and I get this, Joey, don't get me wrong. I understand protecting the building envelope should be number one priority. The biggest harm that we have coming to a house is always going to be water, all right? But paint isn't the only thing that lets water come in, is it, Mark?
No, God, no. I mean, a lot of times we're, especially if you're in a basement, especially older basements, which is common, that they've painted the walls and it's got stone foundation, something along these lines, and that paint is going to just be chipped to high heaven. So,
but what about other roofing and other exterior things, windows, doors, things like that? What are some of the stuff that you find that lets water come in?
Bad flashing or lack of flashing.
What is flashing? I know I got people listening here that don't know what that means.
Yeah, sure. So that's, when you're constructing or putting in a window or a door, any kind of opening in an envelope of a home, you're going to have steel flashings that go around the wood or concrete or whatever it is that they're using. And that's going to help protect against a storm or water leakage that could get through kind of the surface of just your siding or whatever. So it's a double, it's like a fail-safe against water getting through the through there. So
I call it belts and suspenders.
Yes, exactly.
When you say steel though, you mean metal. So like aluminum or copper. I've seen that be used as flashing as well. So different types of metals. But yeah, it's any time we have a change in construction materials. So if I'm going from brick to aluminum, I need to have something to make that transition to keep water from coming in here. Absolutely. Anytime I have a change in direction, I have to have something that's going to prevent water from coming in there. And then anything that I have that's a protrusion. And these rules go for roofs, too.
Yes, absolutely.
All right, so the plumbing stacks, chimneys, electrical post that goes up there. But, I mean, come on. Can't anybody just throw a little patching up there, a little goop, you smooth it around, and voila.
That happens all the time, and that's not a very good remedy. The reason being is that stuff gets dried out by the sun, cracks, reopens again, and you're back to having the leak come back. So really the appropriate repair is to have a flashing at those locations. And that's just the truth of it. So we see repairs like this all the time, or that it was installed initially without anything inside there, any kind of flashings, and that could be causing, why your paint is peeling somewhere else. Things are all related inside of a house. One thing is connected to another thing. So we know all this, so we're kind of putting it all together in our head as we're not just looking superficially, but like up on the roof for a while, looking then into the attic, looking what goes down inside of the house, and we can tell you where it's all coming from typically, not always, but most times, where we have a good, strong suspicion of what's happening.
But Joey, none of those items that we were talking about with flashing, change of directions, those are not specifically listed in the NPR. It's more of a generic keep the water out type thing, isn't it?
Correct. So if there is obvious signs of water damage, or if, worst case scenario, pooling of water, right? An appraiser is going to see that, and they're going to say, hey, we need an inspector to come out here, verify that there's no water issues here, or you need to get proof of sealing treatment.
Now, we have, I think, in our company, I think we got six different types of what we call certifications, all right? And we've been called out before when somebody would have a problem with something that the appraiser said, and they want somebody else to come out here and okay. And the number one thing that we used to do a lot was roofing certifications. And there was a time frame where any flat roof required a roofing certification. Or if the appraiser felt that this was a problem, they needed us to go out there and fill out that roofing certification. I don't get that request anymore. Any thoughts on that, Joey? Why that has changed, or when it has changed?
Getting a roofing certification? So yeah. I get those sometimes. I mean, it's dependent on the condition of the roof, right? So if we see clear shingles are starting to come up, right? Or, I mean, there's a lot of appraisers don't go on the roof and they'll say, they couldn't go up because of weather. They couldn't go up for too steep of a roof, this reason, that reason, whatever. They'll come up with a reason, right? They don't like to go on the roof. They just don't.
Sure.
But if they see obvious wear and tear or shingles raised from the ground, they're going to bring that up, and then they will get a ladder out. They're going to look at the roof, right? But generally, I'm sorry, appraisers, but from my experience, I have just seen them look at the roof from the ground and be like, yeah, it looks okay, and they move on to the next thing. And it's because they're trying to get it done as fast as they can, right?
I don't want to believe that one. I'm going to argue just a tad. Maybe they just don't feel comfortable. And I'm sorry. I don't mean to be mean and stuff like that, but I don't want to think that somebody's being lazy. I hate when people become lazy. You do too. I know that, all right?
Oh, big time.
And I don't want to go right to that right away, but there's other reasons. Maybe they don't carry a ladder. There definitely is not a requirement. Did you know that in the Illinois Home Inspector Act, that home inspectors are not required to walk on the roof? Did you know that?
Oh, no. That's terrifying, though.
Well, it is what it is.
Repair if it ever needs to be made.
Yeah.
And all we have to do is document how we inspected the roof. And you can see, I'm going to confess this, you can see quite a bit from the ground.
Absolutely.
And Mark, you tell me, before you go up there, okay, I know I'm going to find a pound around the chimney.
Within seconds.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But we still go through the motions, and we don't walk every roof. Sometimes they're, you go, tell me why.
Way too steep, or it's dangerous because it's icy out, or it just rained, or there's a million reasons why.
Clay tiles, wood roofs.
Too gentle a material that you don't want to step on.
We don't want to take a chance of breaking anything.
Yeah. But I'll get my drone out now. Go ahead.
There you go. That's where I was going. Is there a special way you guys could check out the roof without having to step on it?
Yeah. There's backup plans.
Always, yeah. You can have we have drones. We could put up even a GoPro on a stick and put it up there.
The docu-poles.
Yeah, those are good too.
I got a 30-foot painter's pole.
Yeah.
And then I could put that camera up there, and I could just get 30 feet. You can get pretty close to just about anything.
Yeah.
And take a lot of pictures. But
yeah, the drones are really, they're great. So
they're great because you get to see a big area. You could zoom in for a small area. You could do the whole roof in less than a half hour.
Yeah. The technology of it is superior. The cameras themselves are 4K, so you can
oh my God,
you can get home and zoom in a million miles, even if you didn't get that close. So you still have a real good idea what's going on.
So there's backup plans
for sure
that we do it, but it's still not required. And our company policy is we feel
that said, I think you're going here right now. Is I still prefer to walk it if I can.
That's it.
There's just when you're walking it and you're right there on top of it and you can feel it with your feet and you're kind of right there, with your own eye. Yeah, you can touch it, you can see it, then you really know, oh no, this is, this isn't any good, or it's fine. A lot of times, no, it's fine. You just have that good sense because you've done it physically.
Now, when that comes back in the appraiser and we find, I guess I should back up a little bit. Joey, how long do you want that roof to last for the buyer? If we're...
I want that roof to last forever.
Yeah.
Which it's not going to happen, right? But I mean, if it looks like this thing is beyond its expected lifespan, but it's not leaking, is that all you care about, that it's not leaking today?
So the appraiser is actually going to be the one who gives the life expectancy of the roof and the what the recommendation is, right? So if we're looking, I'll look at the years. I want to say it's 10 years. We want to make sure it's going to last, or 5 to 10 years, right?
Okay. That's interesting because most of the certs I did, most of the certs that I've always done were 2 or 3 years is what the banks would require.
In my head, I'm rethinking this because everything is always 3 years. So we're looking for 3 years, and if it's under that, then there's going to be obvious problems, right? We're going to make sure that an actual roof inspector goes out there to actually certify the life expectancy of that roof, and if they come back and say less than 3 years, then we have a problem. Then we have to, get it reshingled. If the whole roof needs to be replaced, that's a terrible cost.
Yeah.
But that would obviously be a remedy that would be required. But yeah, I do apologize.
I'm not trying to trap you.
I almost never have a roof repair issue come up, which is nice.
Yeah.
And typically the life expectancy I'll see on a roof is 10 or 20 years. That's typically what I see out in appraisals.
So they actually write that on those appraisals, huh?
Yeah, they have to give a life expectancy for the roof.
That's interesting.
Or they will give one.
Yeah, I didn't know they did that. I mean, we don't even do that.
Yeah, I know, because you never really know. I mean, you could be in a house
unless you're pulling permits.
Yeah.
Even then, how do you know somebody pulled a permit to go ahead and have the roof done?
Yeah,
that's
a tough one.
Oh, yeah.
And in Chicago, when we get into the city, you don't require a permit to put a re-roof on a residential home. You don't even apply for that. I think it has to be 4 units, and that's a guess. Don't hold me to that one. I think it's 4 units or a commercial building is when you have to start getting permits to do that stuff. So let me throw this out there, too, to real estate agents, home inspectors, appraisers. If you do have something that looks a little awkward with the roof, there's another option. We could start talking about using insurance adjusters. And we work with a company out in Elgin. And, they're not, I know I hear a lot of people saying storm chasers and everything else. But the bottom line is these guys know the laws, all right? And insurances, they have rules on when they will pay to replace a roof. And we do have hail damage. We do have wind damage that happens here. Yep. And they're able to recognize those things. And we can somewhat, we're not as expert as they are, but we can do it. So if somebody is having an issue like that where they think a roof that might be a $20,000 bill is going to go ahead and create a problem, give us a call at Chicagoland Home Inspectors, and we'll get you in touch with a couple of insurance adjusters, and let's find out if we can make a claim on the insurance. There's nothing immoral about doing that. That's why we pay for the insurance.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely been times when I've been up on a roof where it was no doubter that was hail damage, and it's just apparent as could be. So why not get that taken care of? I know the insurance covers this, so let's put it back to them to see if we can work something out.
And that could be a $16,000, $20,000, $30,000 bill that somebody's not going to have to pay for anymore. And that's what the insurances are for. So we always want to help. Again, Chicagoland Home Inspectors. Our website is www.thehomeinspectors.com. Our phone number is 312-544-9180. Our school site is Home Inspection University, Illinois. So that's HIUIL.com. I'll repeat, HIUIL.com. If you're interested in becoming a home inspector, you can start the class for free. And if we find out it's not for you, that's fine. You don't have to finish. You are going to end up paying for field training, and there's other costs involved to get a license. That's true. But if you're looking just to put more knowledge in your brain, do it.
Yeah, right? You're curious, right? So you want to say, hey, maybe I want it, maybe I like it. And then you start taking a couple classes and say, it's not for me. You didn't spend any money.
And quite frankly, everybody in the real estate profession, we all should know as much as we can. Yeah. I'm trying to learn more about your work, Joey, because I never realized how we cross paths so much and how I can help your appraiser and your mortgage go through just by knowing what problems are going to arise ahead of time, and then we could go ahead and solve those. Joey, take a minute, please, and tell people how to get hold of you again.
Joey Matthews, and I don't need to say my name again. Phone number is 630-235-2405.
Again.
You can email me at jmatthews@thefederalsavingsbank.com. Find me on social media. I'm Joey W. Matthews everywhere on there.
I love it. Joey awesome. W. Matthews everywhere.
Yep.
That is just phenomenal.
Yep.
So lead paint we talked about, that's a big issue. Mark, why is lead a problem? And water lines too. And Joey, I want to talk about that next. But Mark, tell us, why is lead an issue to people?
It's a poison essentially that if ingested can cause irreparable brain damage, especially to anyone, but especially to infants and toddlers and stuff like that. So, and it can get into the water lines. If you're talking about lead pipe overnight, it can kind of saturate into the water. If you have chipping lead paint, believe it or not, kids really do eat stuff off the floor, and they really can ingest lead paint, and you can have some really serious poisoning from that. So to be avoided at all costs.
Yeah, and then just to add a little bit to it, it stops the development of the brain, and it does cross over to placenta. And if you think about it, kids put everything in their mouths, right? So they're on the floor, they're crawling. it's not just the chips, it's also the dust. And then all of a sudden, you're going ahead and putting your fingers in your mouth, and now you're getting that lead dust in your mouth. Or maybe, here's one that really scares the bejesus out of me, Joey. Somebody did construction and renovation on that house, before you moved in there. And all the drywall, every plaster, everything else all had lead paint in it, right? So they did all this demolishing, but yet the furnace and air conditioning was still running. Now all that lead dust is in your ductwork.
Turning on all the time. Or the first time. Sometimes it happens in the summer, now it's the winter time.
And now every time you turn that thing on, you're blowing that lead dust. So it's not just an ingestion. You can also bring it into inhalation.
Yeah.
All right? And now you get this, young family that's starting to grow, and we have a pregnant woman in there. That scares me. These are humans that we're endangering and stuff like that. So, I got a few clear statements when somebody buys a house. So please remember, change your locks.
Yep.
Clean out your ductworks.
Yep.
All right? On every home, no matter what it is, get those ductwork cleaned right away. And as stupid as this sounds, change your toilet seat.
Yeah.
All right? I'm sorry.
Change the batteries on the
smoke alarms.
Yeah.
Put new smoke alarms
Put new
in
smoke
there.
alarms in, please. Yeah.
The laws
play
are
around.
changing on those items and stuff. But what's the deal with the NPR, Joey, when we're dealing with lead water pipes? Is that an issue?
Charlie, you'll know more about that than I do, just because it's so rare now. And I do not know that I have ever seen a appraiser come back and hit us with lead water pipes, but it would be an issue. Right? Because of issues with lead. I'm going to read more on that one, but I've not seen an appraiser hit a house with lead pipes.
And this comes up, and it's fair.
I've never seen it.
Yeah.
That's absolutely fair. Nobody knows everything, and then there's some things that we just kind of, nobody ever told me was always the excuse, but not until you start reading these things. I know we had a discussion about the peeling paint. So peeling paint on the outside of a house has to be fixed, right? What about peeling paint on the inside of a house?
Not on the inside. Generally, that would be a cosmetic thing. I could be wrong here. I know we just talked about this, Charlie, because you were just super in depth on the NPRs a few days ago.
I'm going crazy over these things.
In my head, if it was built before 78, in my head, I'm feeling like the appraiser would still hit it.
I agree. They
if
should.
If it was built after 78, then they wouldn't.
I agree.
So that would be a cosmetic issue rather than because. What kind of water damage is there coming from the outside on an interior paint, right? So I would argue after 1978 that is a cosmetic issue. Prior to 1978, I could see an appraiser saying it could be a lead paint issue.
Okay, I could buy into that too in a heartbeat. Yeah. I see a lot of problems with broken windows. All right, why is that a big issue?
Moisture again.
Really? Okay.
Well, moisture, but also it's so easy to steal a window too. There's tape to do it. Is it actual tape? What is that, Charlie? You know what I'm talking about.
All I know is it's made by a company called 3M, and they can actually take a regular glass window and turn it into stronger than a safety glass window. All right? Did you do that house in Elgin?
Yep. With
the stained glass windows?
Yeah.
And I think that was an FHA.
Yes,
it was
right.
an FHA. Mm-hmm. And they were afraid that the appraiser was going to be calling out the cracks in these beautiful stained glass windows. And on this, was it a Victorian home or something? It was an older home.
Yeah, it was kind of mid-century-ish, but it was like a 2-flat too. It was really pretty. But like the windows themselves were fine. They've taped over some of the ones that were more dangerous. But then I think they were worried about ones that actually weren't even that. They were just the storm window on the that were covering it up. So they had put the 3M tape on there and stuff, and it looked pretty good to me.
Nice,
serviceable,
and it keeps it from breaking. And I know that we don't want any sharp edges where somebody can cut themselves and things like that. Another one that kind of threw me for a loop was egress windows. All right, that at least one of them has to be a legitimate egress window. Not all the windows do, and they all have to have ladders and certain sizes and so forth. That one in the NPR I thought was good as well. So,
do you hear that one get called? Joey, do you hear that one getting called a lot, the egress, or no?
Not really. In fact, I would argue I've only seen it maybe one time, and it was because there was no egress from the rear of the house. But, I mean, that was literally the entire house had no egress on the rear.
Oh, that's
so
weird.
that's an issue. The reason egress matters, egress is your ability to get out of the house in case of emergency, right?
Correct. Yeah, but it's also ingress, Joey.
Yep. And ingress, yeah. If you can't get out of the house in case of emergency, that is a huge safety hazard, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, Charlie and I were firefighters. We were very aware that is a problem.
Yep.
So yeah, that's really what they're looking for. They want to make sure that no one is, in danger of that.
Right,
I'm not going to go into depth on the morbidity there.
Yeah. But I guess, we see a lot inside of basements that are finished, where they finish the basement, they've got a bedroom down there and things like that, but there's no way to get, there's only a single way in and out. I guess I was just curious if they're calling it, I guess probably the appraisers aren't calling that. Yeah.
Yeah, they won't call it a bedroom if it doesn't have egress. It's just another room, it's in the basement. It's essentially a recreational room, but it can't be a bedroom without egress.
And that actually brings up a good point. The appraiser doing all this MPR and their inspection for the VA, FHA, that's really it is for safety of the people living there, don't get me wrong, but it's mostly for the appraisal for the value of the home. I was remembering reading stuff in there about if this is, let's say it's a garage and there's safety issues in the garage, they can leave that there. They just can't count the garage as part of the valuation of the home.
And the value.
Correct. But I did read that, right.
Correct.
All right. And that's any outbuilding of the same thing or the same choice as well. You just don't include that in the value of the home.
Yep.
Okay.
So, and I'll see that too. I'll see there's paint issues. That's what I see on garages. Paint and GFCI on garages. And detached garages, I should say. Mm-hmm. And I'm just like, guys, is this affecting the value of the property? Especially when an appraisal comes in over value, right? I'm like, guys, is this really affecting the value of the property? Can we just take this off and move on? So, yeah, as long as you're not including that in the value of the property, the condition is completely something we can get around.
There's that common sense again.
Yeah, I don't know. I got some issues with that myself. I don't think that's good common sense because people are going to be using the garage. They're going to be out there, and we don't want them to get hurt. We are running close on getting towards the end of time right now. I want to give a special thank you to Devin Tingle. He's our producer right here, and he's the one who makes all the magic work for us and make it right. Yeah. Mark, any final words? And we're short on time, so.
No, thanks for having me on, as always. Give us a call if you need any help. Give me a call directly if you need any help. I love doing inspections. I'm extremely curious, so I'm your man. Chicagoland Home Inspectors.
And Joey, give us the last touch. How do people get hold of you?
Joey W. Matthews all over the social medias with that. Cell phone 630-235-2405. Email jmatthews@thefederalsavingsbank.com. Biggest piece of advice, use Chicagoland Home Inspectors.
That's funny.
Thank you.
All right, you've been listening to WCPT AM 820. This is the Homebuyers Hour. Stay tuned. This is where the facts matter, and Charlie is out.